Was it?
Okay, welcome to our podcast.
That's right. Yeah.
So this week we're talking about gross, scary, disturbing things of the Bible, and we came up with that after a lovely 2.5 hour naming session for this podcast that we still was inconclusive, and we just thought it would be fun.
Yeah. I mean, there's fun
That's
stuff
my
in the
thoughts.
Bible. Yeah, there's fun stuff in the Bible. The Bible isn't the most boring book ever written. It's the best book ever written. It's interesting. It'll lead you towards salvation. There's a lot of good stuff in there.
And there's stuff that's disturbing though too,
Oh, yeah.
because you don't have to justify every bad thing that's ever happened in the Bible. There's some weird stuff. You get into some Old Testament stories.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are a few Old Testament stories. You think of any, Maggie?
I can. You want to know one of my favorite ones?
What?
Jael and Sisera.
Yeah,
Are you familiar with this
What's
at
that?
all?
What's that? No.
So for one, it's a story of a woman in the Bible. In the Bible, I know.
Wow.
But it's one of my personal favorites. So in Judges 4, which is where this was found, it's right after the death of Ehud. So the children of Israel they of course did evil in the sight of the Lord again. So he sent them into the hands of the Canaanites. And this was when Deborah the prophetess was prophesying and judging Israel. And she told Barak, hey, you're going to go into battle against the Canaanites, but you're going to win. But the victory is going to be handed to you from the hand of a woman, from the Lord. And Barak gathered a group of people from the tribe Naphtali and Zebulun and went to fight the Canaanite king and the general Sisera. And they destroyed everyone on that field except for the general Sisera. He ran away, ran off the field, and wound up at Jael's house. And Jael's husband, I believe, was a friend of the Canaanites. So when he got there, she welcomed him with open arms. Hey, we're your friend. We support you. Come inside, have a bite to eat, have a drink, take a nap. So he did, but before he fell asleep, he said, hey, don't tell anyone I'm here. So Jael said, of course not, of course not. So she gave him a glass of milk or a drink of water, and he just fell asleep in her house. And then, right as he was asleep, Jael was on the side of the Israelites and took a tent peg and a hammer and drove it straight through his temple. And so when Barak from the Israelites came looking for him...
Wait. So, hey, they drove a tent stake through his head.
Drove a tent stake through his head.
Now, how big is a tent stake?
I can't say for accurate representation, but yay big?
Like railroad spike size?
Like railroad spike
A
size
foot long?
tent
Longer?
peg.
How long are we talking here?
I don't know, but I mean, think about that.
Paula, though.
That's hard to do. I mean, you would think the head would maybe kind of like roll around a little bit while you're... That's hardcore.
I think he
man.
was in just a nice, solid, deep sleep.
Man, he must have been.
Had to bit.
But, yeah.
So you think that... Oh, man, let's get graphic. You think she went through the ear? Or you think he was laying on his back and went through the temple?
See, I think it went
Says
straight
temple?
temple.
It says temple
So
in
temple,
New King
hammer,
James.
boom.
Facebook, because this is like the hardest part of your skull right here.
Yeah,
I would
right here's
imagine
not.
this side.
If you push into your eyeball and out, you can break your occipital bone right there.
Let's test it.
Let's test it on you, maybe.
That's scary.
Fun fact, if you're ever getting attacked, go straight for the eyes with your thumbs and then pop out and you can break the occipital bone.
That or it only takes 8 pounds of pressure to rip off a man's ear.
Both of y'all scare me.
Thank you.
How do you know these things?
We're glad.
Self-defense.
Yeah, self-defense training.
But that's crazy. No, she like drove the stake into the ground, didn't she?
Yeah, I think it was straight into the ground.
Drove the peg into his temple and it went down into the ground.
Making sure he ain't moving from that one.
She went softly to him and drove the peg into his temple. Yep.
For he was fast asleep and weary.
Should've just had to
So
go-
he died.
That's it. So he died.
So he died. That's
It's very conclusive.
nothing much to it.
Straightforward way of putting that.
Very.
Well,
So
you know.
then Barak shows up and she shows the body of Sisera to him, and glory of Israel was handed to Israel by a woman.
Wow.
So that was like when Deborah was a prophet.
Yes.
Mhm.
So Barak was this. I mean, he was a great general and all that, but God was using women at that
Women.
time. You had
Correct. And Barak even said he would not go to battle unless Deborah came with him.
yeah.
That was his constituency? I don't know.
Yeah.
For going into battle was that Deborah was with him.
Wow, man, that's
That's
crazy.
incredible.
Mm-hmm. So that's a personal favorite of mine.
That's personal favorite of yours?
Yep.
I think that's if you're going to do a list of weird, gross, or disturbing
Yeah.
things in the Bible.
I
That's
feel like
tops.
that gets one
I
of
mean,
the
that's
top
on
ones.
there.
That's tops.
That's on there. So.
Woman drives a tent
I'm
stake through
very
a guy's
thankful
head.
we have this to talk about it on, since I have been vetoed many years in a row for doing it for VBS.
Yeah.
Oh no!
We could easily
So-
do
I
a
know.
weird,
I was
disgusting
thinking
whatever
watermelon,
for
you know,
VBS.
watermelon.
Uh-huh.
We
Amen.
could do it.
I was told no several.
Sadie
several
Walker
I was
would
told
eat
no
it
for
up.
doing the Book of Revelation, and that stuff's going to happen. So
Just warn them now.
I'm just trying to get them prepared for whenever the
Like,
earth
dude,
is engulfed in fire.
Revelation or Noah? Which one?
Revelation.
Revelation.
Yeah.
Noah's a little more kid friendly.
Yeah. Noah's kid friendly.
None of this fluff VBS
No,
stuff.
no,
I mean,
I like
we're
the
gonna
the
get
meat of
into
it.
some doctrine here.
The teacher for the Wednesday night children's class was out a few weeks ago, and I wanted to teach on the Book of Revelation, specifically after chapter 16. You know, where it gets into the good stuff. I was vetoed that by my two co-teachers at the time.
That is correct.
for Tower of
We
Babel.
went for Tower of Babel, and we still made a child cry.
Okay.
No,
He
no,
would've
no,
cried
no,
anyway.
no,
No,
no.
that
That
was that
was
week.
whenever I
We
was
put one in
teaching.
timeout.
Yeah.
That was timeout. I took a rose away from Colton, and he started crying.
There were tears the week before.
That
yes.
There were tears the week before. I put a kid in timeout the week after.
just always tears with
Yeah.
us.
Now, getting back on the gross and disgusting stuff in the Bible.
Yeah, back to scary things.
Back to scary things.
Well,
So,
Revelation can be scary, but
Besides
you
that.
know.
Houston's
Revelation.
dad voice.
Yeah, apparently my dad voice is scary.
That was wild.
Yeah.
Never thought I'd hear that.
Houston's dad voice isn't. Well, mine comes from the Old Testament too, actually.
Ooh, which part?
It's actually in two different books. First one is in Leviticus. It's in Leviticus 18.
Give me a second to turn here.
Well, I gotta have a second to turn to it too.
Yep.
This is not the Bible I look up these verses on. I look up these. Here's
What
a
version are
picture
you
from
using
my-
today?
This is I use King James. Every day I'll use King James. Sometimes, if I want to go for clarity's sake, I'll use ESV, but I will specify that before I use it.
I say mine are usually always coming from New King James.
Mine too.
So this comes from Leviticus 18, chapter 18, verse 21. Not verse 22, that's a different topic for a different podcast. But verse 21. Verse 21 says, "And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Moloch, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy God. I am the Lord." My stutter's really bad today. I'm sorry, guys. But Moloch is a false god worshipped by people in the region of Canaan, the Promised Land. And what Moloch was, it was a false god, and the way they'd worship him is they would sacrifice babies. So, like infants, like up to 1 year old. And what they do is they build this big statue of him, and he'd have his hands out. I think he was an owl god. I think an owl is what people say he closely resembles. And it'd have its hands out like this, and they'd be made of bronze, brass, metal. And they'd build up a big fire beneath his hands. And over here you'd have a bunch of Israelites, or not Israelites at one time, but Canaanites, people from Canaan, and they'd be banging on drums and playing flutes. What they do is they'd set this relatively young baby, so up to one, newborn to one, on these hands. And it burned the baby, and the baby would start crying and trying to wiggle off. And it would wiggle off the hands and go into this big bonfire they built underneath it. So that's how they worship Moloch, was they'd burn these babies. And the reason they played drums and flutes and lyres and stuff was to drown out the screaming of the baby. That way they wouldn't feel
Pretty
so bad about
effective.
it. Yeah,
That is insane.
that's the Canaanites.
Did
crazy.
you find out why it was babies?
Babe, I assume that it's we don't really know what Moloch was for, or at least nothing that I can remember. But my theory is it has to be some sort of earth god, something to bring harvest. Because if you look in different cultures, in what was that place the Romans fought in Africa? You know what I'm talking-
Carthage?
Carthage. Carthage had a god where they would throw babies into fires or children into fires, and it was supposed to make the crops grow healthier. So I can only imagine Moloch is roughly similar, and it's supposed to help make the crops. Because, for years there was a drought there, and probably something along the lines of that. So
I wonder if people didn't hear about Abraham sacrificing his son Isaac and being
And
blessed.
heard it and been like, okay, sacrifice your kid.
They ran with it.
But so in
It's an
Leviticus,
easy jump.
yeah. So in Leviticus 18, which is given, by Moses' law, desert going into Canaan, it says, don't sacrifice babies to Moloch. But hold on, give me a second. I don't have any of my notes wrote down. I'm not as organized.
You're the worst, Houston.
I'm not as
You're
organized.
supposed
We're
to
gonna get
text
you
them
your
to
own
Maggie
notebook.
at least.
He's also mentioned in Leviticus 20, verse 4. And if the people of the land do anyways hide their eyes from man when he giveth of his seed unto Moloch, and kill him not. Hold on, that was just one verse because I just found it on my phone really fast. I should have gone here. 20. Did I say 4?
You said 24.
24.
Chapter 20, verse 4.
Yeah.
It's also in verse 2.
And if the people of the land do... Oh, well, here, if you have it pulled up in your Bible,
Yeah.
you can read it from there.
Okay, I'm just going to start reading in
My phone.
Leviticus chapter 20, and this is under penalties for breaking the law. So, then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Again, you shall say to the children of Israel, whoever of the children of Israel, or of the strangers who dwell in Israel, who gives any of his descendants to Moloch, he shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. I will set my face against that man, and will cut him off from his people, because he has given some of his descendants to Moloch, to defile my sanctuary and profane my holy name. And if the people of the land should in any way hide their eyes from the man when he gives some of his descendants to Moloch, and they do not kill him, then I will set my face against that man and against his family, and I will cut him off from his people, and all who prostitute themselves with him to commit harlotry with Moloch. That was ending with verse 5.
So all this is before they go into the promised
All
land.
this is before they are in the wilderness, walking along, and Moses is saying, hey, God said don't be sacrificing your babies to this guy. And if you see anyone sacrificing their babies and don't do nothing about it, just as bad, don't do it. And
Well, you can see, like, God is bringing judgment upon these people.
Oh, yeah.
They're doing
all
horrible
these people,
things.
they are committing atrocities. They are killing innocent children. And people who are just bystanders watching this happen get the same punishment. Because if you ain't doing something to stop it, you're just as bad as if you're doing it.
Do you have the Jeremiah reference in your stuff too?
I don't have Jeremiah pulled up.
Look-
I have First King pulled up right now.
Put this in with what you're talking about. Jeremiah 7:31, and there's other references too, because the verses you talked about were before they went into Canaan.
I have First Kings pulled up.
Yeah. So God told. Go ahead and do your First Kings reference.
My First Kings one is First Kings, chapter 11, verse 7. And it says, Then did Solomon build an high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, and the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Moloch, the abomination of the children of Ammon. So, Solomon, wisest guy, wisest full human to, ever walk the earth until Jesus, who's fully human, fully God. Solomon, wisest king known to man, builds a place where people can go and sacrifice their babies to this awful spirit.
It's crazy. Not only did he didn't just build the temple of God. He built these other temples.
He built the temple of God, and it says he built the temple of at least 2 abominations, because 2 are mentioned in verse 7. So,
It was all for his wives, wasn't it?
Yep.
He married a whole bunch of women, and they all had different religions, so he
700
tried to
wives.
appease them.
700. Mark Lowry has a song about how many wives Solomon had. It's called "Baby, Why Not Me," and it's about using pickup lines from Song of Solomon.
Oh no.
Oh, no.
No.
I thought we agreed to stay away from that one.
Song.
Y'all just want to do a podcast on Song of Solomon?
Yeah, that's our
Actually, yeah.
Our next episode is Song of Solomon and how.
Tune in next week for Song of Solomon.
Yeah, tune in next
The
week for
message
Song of
version?
Solomon. ESB.
No.
Take all the poetry out of that. Make
No.
it as literal as humanly possible.
Absolutely not. We're canning the whole show.
Canon the show.
Hey.
And
About to be getting hooked.
I know. All right. So here's Jeremiah. Here's Jeremiah 7:31. You're talking about this sacrifice
Yeah,
of
building
children. So one of the places they did that was on Tophet, and it was just a valley, kind of on the. It would have been on the east side, I think, of Jerusalem there, and it's one of the places, Maggie, I'd like to see when I go over there sometime. And I don't know if y'all went through there, but I've got pictures of it. It's really neat. But Tophet was a place where they rebuilt these idols and they worshiped. And this is what it says. This is after they've entered the promised land, after they've lived through the times of kings.
Yep.
And now they're fixing to be taken out of the land because of they're doing the same thing the Canaanites were doing before. So God's fair. He's like, no, you're sacrificing children. You can't stay. And so he brings judgment upon them. Even his own people, he said the same thing. They've built the high places of Tophet, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to burn their sons and daughters in the fire, which I commanded them not, and neither came it unto my heart. So it's not like some people have said this was a ceremonial thing. The children passing through the flames. Imagine guys sitting out there with tiki torches in a row, and Mama walks the new baby right down the aisle in between the flames. Some people have tried to make it out like that. It is not. They burn the kids in the fire. That's why that's a good verse. It says it with the most clarity.
So yeah, Jeremiah's that should be our VBS. Jeremiah.
Yes.
That'd be a pretty good one.
Jeremiah VBS. You just go in and it's just all the abominations Israel's committing, and at the end you have them all get killed or thrown out of the church.
Okay, let's maybe fold that one up and put it in our back pocket for now. We'll come back to that later.
We'll pin it on the board.
Put it on the board.
We'll
We'll
come
think
back
about
to
it. We'll think about it until, May or so when we start working.
May. Like a week before VBS,
Yep,
and then we start working on it.
Jeremiah's so great because he's just crude like that. He's just a regular guy.
He's just a guy.
Isaiah's very eloquent. Jeremiah he just kind of says it like it is.
Well, who was it? Was it Jeremiah? Was it Jeremiah who didn't want to be a prophet?
Jonah?
No, not Jonah. Because Jonah liked all the prophecy stuff. It might not that he didn't want to be a prophet. He just didn't want to go into Israel because he was from Judah.
Oh, Jeremiah said,
Yeah.
I'm not going to speak about it anymore. But the words burned up inside him. Yeah.
So imagine talking to your country, who you communicate to God for, and at a certain point your country's doing so bad, you just go, think I'm going to quit. To which God's like, nah. So you have to keep doing this, and you just have to keep seeing them do the same stuff over and over. I just want to point out, the Israelites, as far back as Moses, so they've probably had a ton of prophets telling them, hey, don't sacrifice your kids to Moloch. That's probably been a staple throughout these prophets. Jeremiah, they've been doing it for years.
Do you think eventually the people in Moloch would just kind of die off, though, if they're
Sacrificing all their kids,
Yeah.
yeah.
Eventually, you're not going to have any more.
What about the practical application to nowadays?
To nowadays?
What about today?
Oh.
You would think that we would get the idea that killing
Yeah.
innocent children is not a good thing.
Killing innocent children. So, even non-biblical, out of most scientists polled who are experts in fetal science and prenatal science say that a new form of life is created at conception. There is new DNA that starts growing at conception. That's a life.
Absolutely.
It's distinct DNA. Neither one of the parents has the same DNA as this zygote that is growing. It's a life. It's the same concept as killing a baby that's been born. You're killing a kid, ain't good.
Yeah. So what's the
Well
value?
said.
What's the value of human life? Where does it fall out? What does it mean for us to be human? When did we become human? That's all really important stuff, and that is all the things that are surrounding the abortion debate right now.
Oh yeah.
Tough stuff. Yeah, practical application will bring that one home, won't it?
Yeah, really.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was a good one.
What you got, Sydney?
Sydney?
So here's the thing.
So here's the thing. I'm less prepared than
We
you.
were simply talking about it Sunday. Nobody told me that A, I would be talking, or B, had to prepare anything.
That is true. No one did.
That is true.
Which
that to
I
you.
do like in 2 Kings with Absalom and the sister, like David's kids.
2 Samuel 13.
It's in
Oh,
2
yeah.
Samuel. I knew it was in
2
the
Samuel
second.
13. It might
Yeah.
be in Kings too, but it's definitely 2
Okay.
Samuel.
Well, Maggie has it prepared, so
Chapter
she'll
13.
talk
Sorry.
on my behalf because I wanted to do that, and then Maggie was like, "I'll do that," and I was like, "Well, dadgummit, Maggie, that's the only one I."
Well,
really
you can
wanna
have it
do."
now if you want my notes. I'll hand them to you.
No, it's okay. You can speak for me.
Okay.
I'll come better prepared next time.
Well,
Okay.
this was straight from Sydney. I did take it from her. but I called dibs before she said it, so.
Thank you.
It's got Absalom, Tamar, and Amnon in 2 Samuel chapter 13. Sorry. So all three of these were children of King David. And I believe it would be after Solomon, correct?
Children of King David?
Yeah.
No, it'd be
Would they be before
be
Solomon?
before
No,
Solomon.
this is before Solomon. It's
Before
during
Solomon? Okay.
Solomon.
it's during David's reign.
During David's reign.
So yeah, he
I don't
David's
really know
king.
if Solomon fell in on the age range on that, though.
He was young. He was one of the youngest. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So all three of these, anyway, were children of King David. And Amnon loved his sister Tamar. Like, not sisterly love, like loved his
Like,
sister Tamar.
Yeah.
Already a weird story.
Yes.
Right,
So
was-
that's starting off right off the bat, gross and disgusting.
yeah. It's a half sister, right?
Probably half sister.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's.
By a different
Like-
mother.
It doesn't make it any better, but
Like verse 2 says, Amnon was so distressed over his sister Tamar that he became sick, for she was a virgin, and it was improper for Amnon to do anything to her.
Now let's point
So-
this out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
his,
go ahead.
His problem wasn't, oh, that's my sister. His problem was, crap, she's a virgin.
Yeah.
yeah, the sister thing completely out the window for dear Amnon.
Well, it's just crazy weird, and the swing of emotions is neat. Said that he was sick for her, and then after things shake out, I'm not trying to get ahead of you, but it says he hated her.
Hated her exceedingly.
Isn't that crazy? Wow.
I think he hated himself.
I think
Let's
it's
dive
more
really
turned
deep
onto
into
him.
Decided to
it. He
say-
hated
Wow.
So
himself.
before we turn
So he
into
was
that,
turning it
so
on
what
her.
happened was he talked to his cousin Jonadab, who gave him a plan of pretend to be sick, call for your sister, have her make you some cakes in your presence, have them feed him to you, and then essentially rape her, which is what he did. So he called to Tamar, she took care of him for a little bit, and then she made him his cakes. He said, hey, let's go eat these in my bedroom. She said, no, this was wrong, and protested against it, and then he forced himself upon her, and then he hated himself for it. Or hated her.
Exceedingly.
Exceedingly.
Yeah.
So, and verse 15 says that he was filled with hate that was greater than his love for Tamar. So Tamar tears her robe, puts ashes on her face because of what's happened, and runs to her brother Absalom's house, who is angry beyond reason at Amnon, but kind of doesn't really say anything against him to King David. So I always thought that was kind of weird.
I think that there are things like this in the Bible because there's so many people that have to go through things like this.
Yep.
And I had a dear friend of mine, she was like a sister to me, that had to go through stuff like that. And even especially when you involve family members, it's such a weird dynamic. And if it's not handled right, it will fester and turn into a monster. And that's what you see happen here.
Just to put this in perspective, Bible, how roughly long ago would you say this happened, King David? How many thousands of years ago?
Oh, it would have been, let's see, so Jerusalem fell in 586.
Yeah, something
And we're
like
going to back up about 400 years. So, this is 800 BC, if my numbers are right.
800
So about
BC. So that's what,
3,000-ish
yeah,
years ago?
3,000-ish.
Roughly.
So that's when this happens. Harper Lee wrote a book called To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
One of the center points of this book
Yes.
is a father rapes his kid. So, just to show how unfortunately common of an occurrence this is. 3,000 years ago, book from the 60s.
I think it's older than the 60s. Is
No,
it
it's from the 60s, but it's about her life growing up in the 30s.
I thought it was way older.
It's my wife's favorite book, Kill a Mockingbird.
It's a great book.
It's a good book.
It's one, even when they made the movie, it's one of the best scenes in movies when everybody stands up when, what's his name? Atticus or whatever walks by. It's good.
Your father reminds me of Atticus.
I've had many
he
people tell me
always has. That's besides the point. Just thought I'd throw
that.
that
Makes
out
me very
there.
uncomfortable, but
Her
thank you.
dad's a lawyer. Just say that.
It's like the
Yeah, former lawyer.
Former lawyer.
Former prosecutor. He doesn't like lawyer terms.
Lawyer.
Lawyer.
The word law is in that word. So.
So, but there's more to that story, right?
Yeah, so as soon as that happens, let me find it. So when King David heard of all these things, he was very angry. This is 2 Samuel 13:21. And Absalom spoke to his brother Amnon, neither good nor bad. But he hated Amnon because he had forced his sister Tamar. So then 2 full years pass, and Absalom is just simmering with this rage still. And it came to pass after two full years that Absalom had sheep herders in Baal-Hazor, which is near Ephraim, and he invited all the king's sons over. He said, kindly note, your servant has sheep shearers. Please let the king and his servants go with your servant. The king said to Absalom, no, my son, let us not go now. We will be a burden to you. But, so Absalom eventually says, if not, please let my brother Amnon go with me. And so they go to the sheep herders, and then Absalom kills Amnon after 2 years. And then he has to flee to, fled to Geshur. And was there for 3 years. And David longed for him the entire time.
Isn't that weird? And you've got David he's got one son that raped his daughter, and another son that murdered his other son, and he still loves them.
Well, and in verse 39 it says he had been comforted concerning Amnon because he was dead. So King David was, I think, rooting for his death all along.
Yeah.
Well, maybe.
I don't think he wanted him to die, but I think it took a load off of him whenever he did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there has to be some type of justice there.
Yeah,
there has to be some type of dealing with it. And
That's
but it lets you know the strong bond between a parent and child, and I think it mirrors kind of how God feels for us, even after we've
Still
done
loves us.
horrible things. He still loves us.
Well, and think about Tamar. Like, she probably couldn't get married after that.
Yeah.
She was seen as an abomination to society. She didn't have a life after that.
that story.
Absalom took her in, didn't he?
Yeah.
She
he
came and lived with
big
him.
brother
And
to the rescue story.
It was.
I mean, she couldn't get married. She probably just didn't get married or have kids or, have a life after that.
That reminds me of there's a story in Genesis about Jacob's kids. He has a daughter. I couldn't tell you where in Genesis.
Judah and Tamar.
That's right, because...
Is it Tamar again?
Yes,
Tamar?
because remember, because
we argued
you
about
were
that,
talking about
yes.
Genesis, and I was like,
Genesis
no,
38.
we just went over this in
Genesis
Sunday
38,
school
okay.
with
Genesis
David's
38.
daughter.
So, low down on the story here before we get to specifics in the Bible.
Yep, Judah.
Jacob has
Yeah.
a daughter. Daughter's walking along. King or prince, someone royalty sees her in this other place and goes, man, I like her, and proceeds to rape her, and sends her back to the family. Well, he has correspondence with the family and goes, man, I'd really like to marry her. Is that where we're heading with this?
No, what
This
do you?
sounds right. I'm going with like Levi and Reuben and all them slaughtering an entire village.
No. Yeah, that was a little bit further back. The Genesis 38 is Judah and Tamar.
Oh,
That's where, Judah, the head of the tribe of
yeah,
Judah.
Judah.
He had a son, and it married this girl named Tamar. Well, the son died early before Tamar could have any kids, and so
That's right.
it was the tradition for her to marry a brother. Well, she married a brother, and he died too. And then Judah's like, I don't know if I want him marrying my baby boy. I don't know what she's cooking to feed these guys, and so he withholds his sons from her, and so he's not done right. So she ends up dressing up like a prostitute, and she gets Judah to sleep with her. And she gets pregnant, and they try to say, oh, wait a minute, here's Tamar. She's been sleeping around. We're going to take her out and stone her. And she's like, oh, yeah, well, the person who's, the baby's father happened to leave.
This is Judah's baby.
Yeah, this with me when he stayed, and it was Judah's staff, and everybody recognized it. And so he said, yeah, you've been more righteous than I have in here. And so it's a weird situation where she became
It's really
pregnant.
crafty. Almost clever on her part.
Yeah, it is. It's really strange that a story like that is in the Bible. But here's what I think is neat about it. You have this child that she had that, what was his name? Pharez? In verse 29, is that it? Yeah, she has Pharez and Zerah. Yeah. And so Pharez is actually mentioned, or Zerah mentioned, in the lineage of Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of such a weird circumstance, and you think, man, everything about that is bad. Well, they may have meant it for bad, but God meant it for good. And so you have even somebody that's in the lineage of Jesus Christ that's mentioned there.
So it wasn't even one of his first sons. It was the one with Tamar that was in Jesus' line.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's crazy.
Right. He's his own grandpa. He really is.
Oh, I hate that.
Grandpa Jones had his own with it.
Didn't
But,
Gwen gave us another reason, Do you remember why? We were talking to Gwen about this, and Gwen was like, well, he probably didn't let her marry the other sons because of this and this and this.
Don't remember.
Don't remember? Okay. I don't remember either.
Well, my story was about these guys' sister. And I couldn't tell you where. It's in Genesis. But sister's walking along, Prince Royalty sees her, rapes her, sends back correspondence. Hey, I want to marry this girl. But he's the only one who can do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, few brothers. It's a Levi, and I can't remember the other brothers that are in on it. And they say, okay, you can marry her, but you and all the men in the town have to get circumcised. Circumcision is a pretty major procedure, especially for an adult. You're laid up for quite a few days after this. So what they do is, after the entire town of men gets circumcised, they go in and they kill everybody they can find in said city. Well, old Jacob's on his deathbed. They come back and they tell Jacob what they did, thinking, hey, he'll be like, hey, yeah, go sons, get revenge for the family. Well, Jacob's on his deathbed, he proceeds to curse Levi and his brothers for going and killing all these innocent people who had nothing to do with the rape, and the rapist himself, because he wanted to marry her. So
That was this Genesis chapter 34 and Dinah.
Dinah, that's it, Dinah.
And you have to go a little bit later in Genesis at the end of Jacob's life and get those
Deathbed curses.
the deathbed cursing. I think it's in chapter 49 and verse 7.
The Dinah incident is
Levi.
what it's titled in my book.
Yeah.
That's
Simeon and Levi.
Simeon was it. I knew it was Levi.
Their cruelty in their habitations. Don't come into their secret under their assembly. Be not united, for in their anger they slew a man. In their self-will they dig down a well. Yeah.
Think about that.
That's it. That's the one.
That's gross to stuff discovered in the Bible.
Yes.
That's what none of us thought about, I don't reckon, until right then.
Yeah. There's lots of them, isn't it?
Yeah, there's lots of them. Sydney,
What else you got, Sydney?
you have one?
Since I stole yours.
Well, not on me, but there's also the one of the two moms who there was a famine in the land. Maybe this was 2 Kings or 1 Kings.
I think
Second Kings.
It was 2 Kings. Okay, that's what I was thinking of then. But
2 Kings
there was a
6.
famine in the land, so two mothers agreed, hey, tonight we will boil your son and we will eat him. And then tomorrow we'll boil my son and we'll eat him. So like they agreed, and the first night they boiled one of their sons, ate him, and then the next night the other mom hid her son so that he was not boiled and eaten.
Yes,
So,
2 Kings
and then-
6:29.
And they went to Solomon for it, and Solomon was like, well, what was
It
his
was your
response?
kid, and-
Yeah, I want to say Solomon was kind of like, well,
No, wait. This was later. Solomon was the one that split
After?
the baby in half, or
Yes.
said he's going to
Yeah,
split the
said
baby
he
in
was
half.
going to.
This is a little bit later. This is under.
This is with Elisha.
This
Was
is
it Elijah?
Elisha.
So the king
Elisha.
would have been Ahab. Is that right?
Yep, would have been Ahab.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. That checks.
That's pretty bad time.
Because it's right after the floating axe head, too.
Yes. That's right.
It's directly after that.
So basically, what you've got going on is the lady calling out to the king. It would have been Ahab, I guess. Is it Ahab? Is that right?
I think it would have been if it's Elisha.
Ahab or...
One right after.
Well, Elijah would have been with Ahab, right?
Hold on.
Who's after Ahab?
Yeah,
Get
concordance right
your
here.
concordance
Yeah,
out.
concordance out.
Get your
I'm pretty
concordance.
sure-
Because
It's right after Naaman.
My phone's vibrating.
who is Ahab's son? Was that be
Gonna have to check.
Okay, this is Harmony of the Gospel.
Gehazi?
Kings of
Joram? It's Joram.
Joram.
Kings of
Or Jehoram. Man, there's a couple that are really close in names that are hard to tell. What do you got?
son of Ahab would be Ahaziah. Ahaziah.
Ahaziah?
Ahaziah?
Ahaziah.
Okay. And who's after that? Because I think he was fairly short.
That
Wasn't
would be
he?
2 Kings 1:1, and then Jerome.
Jehoram or whatever.
You know,
Okay.
pronunciations, forgive me.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, we're not.
He's in 2 Kings 1:17 through 9:29, so it would have been him.
Okay. Well, it doesn't say his name I mean, it may in the text, but right there around that, I think Sydney it
Oh,
just
here
says
it
the
is.
king. You
Maybe
find
that-
it?
Yeah, it's 6. 2 Kings chapter 6. 20.
What about
I think
verse-
28 through 33.
Yeah. 20,
Yeah, it just says the king.
Yeah, 26 says the king of Israel. But that's crazy. He's like passing by, and then somebody says, "Hey, king," you know, because they were supposed to do judgment. And hey, can you make the call on this one for us? We were going to eat my baby, and then
We ate my baby.
we ate mine, and then she hid hers.
Now we can't find him. Now we don't have anything to eat.
Yeah,
I'm hungry.
bad times, right?
Mm.
Horrible times.
That's pretty rough.
Yeah.
Wanna go on next?
No, Moloch is what I spent most of my time researching
Okay.
on. Yeah, it looks like you got some more.
Jezebel's also in 2 Kings. If you want to do that, since we're already
yeah.
Yeah,
here.
that's a
Jezebel's death.
This started at 2 Kings.
It's a fun one. Jezebel's violent death.
Jezebel's
Jezebel's
violent.
As it says in New King James,
You know, I
violent.
like to think she lived as she died, so
I mean, that
died as she lived.
same thing.
Same thing, potato, potato.
He who lives as a dog gets killed by a dog.
Yep.
What chapter is that?
Chapter
9. It's the end of 9.
Very
So
end of 9.
30 through 37.
Right before Ahab's 70 sons are killed.
Wow.
Dang.
This Ahab guy, not looking like the greatest dude on the planet right now.
Ahab was the worst of the worst.
The worst
man.
guy to ever rule
Yeah.
Israel.
Yeah, he was no good.
He was at
Sitting,
that bottom of the list.
sitting down thinking to yourself, man, what should I do? Kill all the prophets. That's how I'll spend my time.
Well, I mean, if they're prophesying against you, it does make sense.
They're prophesying against you and old Baal.
It's not the right move, but it makes sense.
Well, this is kind of the end of his dynasty, isn't it? With Jehu, that starts a new dynasty in Israel. So the kingship is not passed on anymore.
There's two more
Jehu's
kings
a
after
different
Ahab.
family. Yeah.
And they're relatively short kingdoms.
Way to go, Ahab.
Yeah, nice. Now let's talk about your wife's violent death.
Yes. We don't revel in the violence.
We don't revel in the violence.
It's,
but it was
it's
deserved.
there. It's just one of those things that you take note of, and it's like, wow, man,
Wow.
it's crazy the detail you get.
Makes any video adaptation get the R ratings.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Are we gonna...
Guys,
Maggie?
you
Read
ready to take it away,
or-
Jezebel?
Didn't
You
Oh,
brought it up.
We're waiting on you.
okay, guys. I just kind of... I'll read it. So 2 or 3 eunuchs looked out at him. Then he said, "Throw her down." So they threw her down, and some of her blood spattered on the wall and on the horses, and he trampled her underfoot. And when he had gone in, he ate and drank. Then he said, "Go now, see to this accursed woman, and bury her, for she was a king's daughter." So they went to bury her, but they found no more of her than the skull and the feet and the palm of her hands. Therefore they came back and told him, and he said, "This is the word of the Lord, which he spoke by his servant Elijah the Tishbite, saying, On the plot of ground at Jezreel dogs shall eat the flesh of Jezebel, and the corpse of Jezebel shall be as refuse on the surface of the field, in the plot at Jezreel, so that they shall not say, Here lies Jezebel."
So was she pushed or did she fall out the window?
She was thrown out the window.
Thrown out the
And he
window
threw her
and
down.
then trampled by horses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jehu said.
And then dogs ate her.
And then dogs. ate
The
her.
dogs part's what really got me. Honestly, it's like people fall, they get
Yeah.
trampled.
People go
But,
out
like-
the windows and then
Yeah,
trample
blood's
by
fine.
But,
horse.
like,
That's
Dogs.
rough.
But, like,
and then
them
dogs eating her?
Tearing, they tore her apart. They could not find no more than skull, feet, and
Yeah.
Her hands.
What's your 35 say?
35. So they went to bury her, but they found no more of her than the skull and the feet and the palms of her hands.
Wow.
So they tore her apart. Because, these are probably wild dogs. Like, they're just getting whatever they can get.
So like
Yeah, this is not
hopefully,
Rover.
hopefully death on impact. Because getting
I know-
That would be the
tortured-
best option.
Death
If-
on impact would be best option if you're Jezebel here.
How high do we reckon this window was?
Well, it says blood splattered on the walls whenever she fell.
But, did she fall and then get trampled? Or was it like a Mufasa situation where she fell into the trampling?
I think she
I think
fell and
she
then got
fell
trampled.
and then horses were coming and trampled.
And then the dogs came in and tore apart her dead
And as for the
corpse.
height, I'm thinking kind of castle-ish, so maybe 2-3 stories.
Yeah, probably about that.
Far enough to make blood splatter.
Yeah.
Yeah, like blood splatter on the wall.
I don't know where exactly that line
Yeah, where's
is.
the wall at?
That's true. Was it like a city wall? Was it the palace wall?
Well, it says out a window.
I'd assume palace wall.
Well, I'm sure we can see.
Because they threw her. She
Yeah.
can't be that far from the
Jake
palace
and-
walls.
Very nice. They threw her down. Some of her blood splattered on the
Out a
wall
window.
and on the horses, and he trampled her
Probably
underfoot.
palace wall.
I think sometimes our concept of the palace wall is influenced by like medieval England. So like we see knights in shiny armor, we think about the big castles like that. It may not have been exactly that.
Yeah, because even then, palace and castle, different things. You know, palaces are like lower, but they're bigger.
Sure. Palace also, at least in England, a palace is where a royalty resides, and a castle.
It's a defensive position.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. Fall enough to make blood splatter. Let's end it on that.
Think about this. Palms of their
What?
hands. No, we
What?
just got into
I
this.
just barely touched on this one.
Okay, this
Palms of the hands, no fingers,
no fingers.
Oh,
Go
just
on.
the
Palms.
and
So
the
that'd be like-
soles of their feet.
The whole middle part of your palm, or is it just the skin of your palm?
Why would the dogs leave that?
To send a message.
Yeah.
I guess.
To fulfill the prophecy and send a message.
I guess so.
And then it says she's to be dung upon the fields. So you're just like sitting there, and King, after he throws you out a window and wants you to get devoured by dogs, goes, "I'm gonna go grab me a snack and something to drink." Proceeds to do that. And he goes, "Yeah, don't bury her. Let the dogs crap her out."
Man. Well, is it her that died in the same place that Naboth's vineyard, or was that Ahab that died in
I think it's
Naboth's vineyard?
Ahab.
I wanna say Ahab.
died
I
there.
think it's Ahab.
That can't be too far past that, right?
I think it's actually in a complete different book. So I think you've got to back all the way up to like First Kings.
Kings and
Disregard
Chronicles,
that.
the most confusing books to read.
Yes, they are.
Because they're out of order.
That's why a good
Ahab dies in battle. 1 Kings chapter 22.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's so good for to have a concordance or some type of map, because the kings change at different times. It's hard to keep up with if you don't have something good.
Especially if
and
you're
reliable.
trying to do a dual study of Judah, Judea and Israel, because that gets real confusing. Because even the first two separate kings of the kingdoms after they split apart have incredibly similar names, Jeroboam and Rehoboam, you know.
They always get me confused.
I have to look at my concordance just to know which one ruled which one.
I need to go through and highlight in two different colors for who's who.
Yeah, that's the harmony of the Gospels.
Oh yeah, there it is. First Kings 22 and verse 38. They washed the chariot out in the pool of Samaria, and the dog licked up his blood. Man.
Yeah. So just to say this in my concordance, it says it gives the name of the king, who he's the son of, how long he reigned, and it says good or evil. So to read off until we get to Ahab and Israel, we have Jeroboam, evil. Nadab. Or Nadab.
Nadab?
Nadab. Probably Nadab, right?
Reigned 2 years, evil. Baasha.
Baasha, yeah.
Baasha. The one A I didn't pronounce. Evil. Evil. Ella. Ela. Forgive me for pronunciation. I'm gonna say it.
We're not professional or...
No. One 7 days, realizing his cause was lost, committed suicide. So basically, after evil king before him died, this guy technically takes over because he has no heirs and he's captain of the army. And like 7 days later, commits suicide. So
Oh, I made it a week.
made it a week after the previous king died. And then we get to Ahab's line with his dad, Ahab's dad, Omri.
Yeah.
Omri.
was he's the head of the
Good
dynasty. And he's mentioned in things like the Moabite stone and things. So there are other cultures that write about the Omri dynasty. They mention him more than do Ahab.
Evil. Ahab, evil.
Evil.
Ahab's son, evil.
Evil.
Ahab's grandson, evil. So basically, every king of Israel I've ever found is just straight up evil.
Yep.
In Judah, you're 5 kings in, or I guess technically 3 kings in, and you have good. With
Evil,
Asa.
evil, good.
good.
Yeah.
With Asa. And then you have good for a few years, and then you go straight back to a bunch of evil kings.
Well, some good long stretches of good kings, but they had their problems too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's why the kingdom of Judah stuck around a little bit longer, because they were
better.
well. I mean, they had a little better leadership for longer periods of time. If you have a 50-year stretch of a good king like Uzziah, well, things were good.
Yeah, things were good. You weren't making God angry for that 50 years, as much as Israel's doing here in this short span of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of Israel that's evil inside of the Lord.
That's about it. I saw something, and it made me think. Even going back to the sister stuff, I saw something, Babylon B. They had one. It was like the Bible abridged, and it was Leviticus. Don't do gross stuff. Numbers. Why are you still doing the gross stuff? Deuteronomy. Okay, Exodus part 2. Joshua. Quit doing gross stuff. So Israelites have a long history of doing really gross stuff. And really bad stuff.
But that really sums it up.
Man, we got all kind of other stuff that we could do in here. And of course, we're going to run short on time here. We've talked about Ehud. We've talked about Judah and Tamar. What about, like, Lot's daughters? Genesis 19.
Oh, I hate
that
that
Sydney
story.
wouldn't let me talk about that
I hate
one.
that story. It makes me so
I suggested it.
uncomfortable.
She said no.
I mean, we can do it. It's just
Talk
so.
about it.
It's the worst to me.
Are you okay with us talking about it, Sydney?
I mean, yeah. I mean,
I wanna get your
it's in
permission.
the Bible,
We
of
have
course.
somewhere.
It's terrible.
Let's-
It makes me
And this
so
is just
uncomfortable.
Old Testament.
Yeah.
We haven't even
We
touched
haven't
on New
even gotten to
Testament
New
stuff.
Testament.
Well, here's the thing.
We can do it.
You don't, all that weird stuff, you don't have to figure out a way to justify it. Some of that stuff is just weird and wrong. And
Evil.
yes. So, yeah, it's kind of weird. However, it gives you some background information in Genesis 19. That's the biggest part of it for me. It's, you can look and see that's where the Ammonites and the Moabites came from. It's Lot's folks. They're mentioned all throughout the Bible. And if you just make that connection, hey, all right, you do what you want to with the story, but that's the connection that I think is relevant moving forward.
So,
Unless you've got something else, Houston.
talking about Lot's daughters.
You
Something
you
like
had
that?
on there Sodom and Gomorrah. Do we want to start out with Sodom and
Start out with
Gomorrah
Sodom and
and then
Gomorrah,
go?
go into Lot's
It's
daughters.
right after another.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
So we can
So Sodom.
start out Sodom's depravity in chapter 19 and go on till. I think all of 19 is basically Sodom and Gomorrah and Lot's daughters.
Yeah.
We can read straight, or we can do summary and read a little.
Well, for time's sake, let's just do summary.
Summary.
Because we may have a few others too stuff we ain't even touched on yet.
Yeah.
Lot and his family living in Sodom, and God tells Abraham, "Gonna destroy Sodom." To which Abraham's like, "No, Lot lives there." And he said,
Lot was
I'm
Abraham's
so
nephew,
hungry.
correct?
Lot was Abraham's nephew, and man, you're always put on the spot whenever you're trying to describe something like this. I'm not sure how you do this every Sunday.
Well, no, the whole thing is that when they go to see what's happening in the city,
They just need to find how many righteous people in Sodom.
Well, it starts at like 50, doesn't it? And then it decreases each time
To like
until
10.
To like
Yeah,
10.
Like 10.
And it's not even possible.
These angels have to find 10 good people in Sodom. They get to Sodom and they're immediately attempting, the people of Sodom are attempting to rape these angels actively. When Lot's like, "Hey, come in." And the people of Sodom gather around Lot's door and start yelling at him to bring them out so they can rape them.
it gets weirder though, because he's like, "Take my daughters."
Yeah,
you know?
he offers up his daughters instead.
You're like, take her.
Like
take
Dad
them.
of the Year award.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Host of the year.
I'm
yes.
against it. I'm against it, folks. No, I can't.
No.
I just can't imagine that.
Well,
I cannot.
In
imagine
his defense, like, these are angels, like, from heaven.
Did he know that at that
Like-
point, though?
Oh,
I
I
think-
don't know
I
about
think he just
that.
thinks they're visitors at that point. He just
Oh,
thinks
that's a
they're-
good point. I retract my statement.
So he's just that hospitable
Mr.
to these people to where he's like, No, let them be. Take my daughters.
I just can't imagine. I can't imagine. Here's the thing that we can, even in modern days, get ourselves in such sinfully depraved situations that it's hard to tell which way is up, which way is right or wrong or whatever. Man, it's you don't have to cover for Lot and say, oh, he did that. No, you can call it wrong.
Yeah.
It happened, but
So, God's going to destroy Sodom because the angels could not find 10 righteous men. And he tells Lot and his family, get out. To go to Gomorrah, to run over. Don't look back. If you look back, turn into pillar of salt.
Well, and then verse 14, it even says that Lot tried to get his son-in-laws to go to marry his daughters and said, get out of this place, the Lord's going to destroy the city. And his son-in-laws thought that he was joking.
Yeah, they just go, nah.
they
Just
laughed
like,
him out.
No, yeah, they left him out. It's
So,
like, yeah, right.
so, Lot and his family running towards Gomorrah, which is safety. Try not to look back at Sodom when Lot's wife turns around and looks back because she misses that sin so much. I can only assume is what that is. Or maybe not sin, but that place of comfort.
It's tons of lessons. It's like that's her home, that's her place. She loves it. She looks back for that. But that's where all that depravity was. So don't look back into that stuff. And the other thing is, you may be preaching the gospel to somebody and they think you're crazy. And they laugh at it and think, what's wrong with this guy? I mean, maybe somebody you love and somebody you're friends with, but you know what? There's a lot of lessons
With
in
Lot.
in Lot, and yeah,
So-
don't look back. Keep preaching the gospel. People
She
are going to
becomes
think you're
pillar of
crazy.
salt. She becomes pillar of salt. And that is Sodom and Gomorrah, effectively. And y'all can take over Lot's daughters.
Okay.
Yeah, there
I
you
guess
go.
he said he doesn't like
There's
it.
your segue.
So after they, let me find it correct, so I get it correct first. So after they run out of the city, they're in the mountains. And Lot went up to Zor and dwelt in the mountains there, and his 2 daughters were with him. And he was afraid to dwell there. So they lived in a cave. So at this point, I would take it and assume that he had no grandchildren. So the firstborn, this is straight from Genesis chapter 19, verse 31. So the firstborn daughter said to the younger, our father is old, and there is no man on earth to come in to us, as is the custom of all the earth. Because they just left their husbands behind in the city to burn. So they got their father drunk, and then she said, we will lie with him so that we may preserve the lineage of our father. So they made their father drink wine that night. Firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he did not know that she lay down or when she arose. And then it happened the next day, and the firstborn said to the younger, it's your turn. So she went in and lied with her father. And they made their father drink the wine, got him drunk, she went in with him. And then both of the daughters of Lot were with child by their own father. And the firstborn bore a son and called him Moab, and he is the father of the Moabites. And the younger also bore a son named Ben-Ami, and he is the father of the people of Ammon.
They raped their dad.
It's weird. Don't drink.
Yeah, do not
No
become so
alcohol.
drunk.
Okay.
There's another lesson for you in all that.
Lesson here in the Bible, drinking, not called out as a sin, probably best to stay away from it. Drunkenness is a sin, and drinking tends to lead to drunkenness.
Especially don't get so drunk that you don't realize when you are sleeping with your own family.
Whenever your daughter comes in, or you don't even realize you're sleeping with someone.
Yeah, that if you're at that point, that's way too far.
Tim Hawkins had a thing, and it said they made a can of beer, and this can of beer turns blue whenever it's cold enough to drink. If you're so drunk, you can't trust the nerve endings in your own fingertips to tell you whether or not
Yeah.
something's cold.
Yeah. It's probably
Call
time
it
to cut it off.
Yeah.
Way before then.
What's the problem with beer? It affects your judgment, and if you're having to make a judgment on when to stop drinking, this is a whole counterintuitive, measures. Just don't drink. That's the best thing.
Don't drink.
Just don't drink.
It's horrible for
It's
you.
a lot easier.
It's good advice. I'm just telling you. It's great advice.
Don't drink.
Yes.
Don't drink. Don't sleep with your dad. Uh,
Yeah.
Yes. Don't sleep with your dad either. Thank
Don't
you.
choose husbands
Thank
that
you,
are gonna stay in
Houston,
the
for
city of
pointing
sin.
out the obvious too.
don't sleep with your half sister,
Right.
or else your brother will kill you.
Pretty.
Don't
This
fall
stuff.
asleep in a lady's house.
We can laugh at this type of stuff, but nowadays there is a morality that's just outside of what the Bible is. And listen, we laugh about it now, but in 10 years, is society going to be laughing about those things, or is it going to be normalized and common again, like it was in that day? So, yeah, let's make sure we have our morality firmly set in the Bible.
In the Bible.
Yeah.
I mean, self-mutilation is already so common with a certain movement that's been gaining traction in the past few years.
A certain move. You're talking about
I'm talking about
transgenderism? I'm not just reading between the lines?
Yeah, just reading between the lines here. I'm talking
Just go ahead
about
and say it.
transgenderism. Yeah, I'm talking about transgenderism, self-mutilation. There are people who, there are interviews. Jordan Peterson has a great interview with this sweet girl named Chloe. And she transitioned to she wanted to become a boy. She had a double mastectomy. I don't think she had bottom surgery, but she had her voice changed too. And this day, you hear repercussions of having her voice changed and being on testosterone and all that. She said that was the worst years of her life, was whenever she tried to become happier by becoming a boy. Psychology. You get a book that's about as thick as two of these Bibles put together. It's called a DSM. And DSM, up until the latest edition, which is the DSM-5, gender dysphoria was listed as a mental disease. Now, what changes between DSMs 1, 2, 3, and 4 to DSM-5, where that becomes not a disease, and what it is it's become socially accepted. So things can become socially accepted faster than you could think of, and we can be right back to Lot's daughters, Lot's wife, Sodom.
That's where we're at. And think of the corrective action. How do we right that ship after a generation that has gone through and accepted that? You know, it's difficult.
It's transgender people who experience gender dysphoria have a 42% suicide rate. If that doesn't tell you something's wrong, that's a pretty big indicator. 42% suicide rate is higher than American slaves, higher than Jews in the Holocaust. If you're having a 42% suicide rate with a specific community, they might need mental help more than they need to have their body parts cut off.
It's really interesting. Suicide is a first world country problem.
Yep.
You don't see it in other places, and it's hung over a parent's head like, okay, if you don't support your child in this, then they will commit suicide. And the reality is, with or without the support.
Yeah, just specify that 42%
detrimental.
is both pre and post transition. Same percent rate of suicide.
Yeah, that's tough.
Well, leaving on that happy note.
Yeah.
Well, let's do this. I think one of the most disturbing things you can have in here is the crucifixion. What about that?
That's true. I was going to say,
I thought about that.
I
No, because that's like the science of it.
Crucifixion. So,
It's crazy.
So, while y'all are flipping the specific verses, low down on Roman crucifixion. Jews
No
are.
good verse to look at.
Yeah, Jews are.
Uncle Isaiah.
What is the law? The law is that you can only whip a man 40 times, right?
39.
39.
40.
40
But
is the
everyone
limit.
does 39 because they're too afraid of going over and getting damned to hell. So the Romans make a point to whip any Jew they have a lot more than 40 times. So what it is it's like a bullwhip, or like a cat of nine tails, more likely, with chunks of metal on the end. What it is they whip, and those chunks of metal come in and they scrape the skin off your back. So, does it say how many times they whipped Jesus?
I don't know that it gives.
I don't think it gives.
I don't know if it ever
number,
gives a
but
specific number.
Anyway,
You might not be
skin
able
is-
to know the number.
So skin is actively peeling off Jesus' back, and they hand him this. I don't know, how heavy do you think a crucifix would be?
I don't know.
Heavy.
I'd love to, because some people say it's just a crossbeam, and others that it's the full thing. There's different studies.
Different
I don't know
interpretations.
what's
Yeah.
right, but either way, after you've
Heavy.
been through that, it was physically possible for a while, but they had broken him.
So he's carrying the cross. They have to get someone else to help him, And Roman law, this guy couldn't refuse. So they carry it up, and they nail him to the cross. Where they would nail him is they nail him here, roughly, because that's where you can support your body weight.
Because if you did it right here, it would
if you do it right here,
through
it rips through your hands. So you gotta go right here, and kind of right above the ankles towards the shin, because those are the only two places where you can support your body weight if you drive nails through someone's body. And you're put out like a crucifix. You know what a cross looks like. So put out on the cross, and the only way you can breathe is you have to push up and off of your legs. You have to push down on that nail and reach out, and then come back. So they normally let people hang like this for hours on end, and then they go out and they do what is a death blow. So two most common ones are they go out and they break your legs so you suffocate, or they take a spear, jam it through your chest into your lung or heart. So.
Well, I mean, and most people I thought already died from asphyxiation,
Yeah.
went from breathing, and then they did the death blows, to be sure. Because, I mean, these are professional killers.
The spears, more or less, to be sure. But if you had someone who was hanging on a bit too long, you just go out and break his legs and suffocate him. But they do that.
Have y'all ever seen the movie Misery? With Stephen King.
Oh, where she hobbles his legs?
There's a classic scene in there. The lady takes a cinder block and puts it in between this guy's legs. She hits it with a sledgehammer. It's just it's gross, cringing Stephen King stuff. Now imagine somebody coming to do that after you've been on the cross. That's the kind of brutality, cringy stuff that they were doing.
Some people say Jesus survived the crucifixion. We have no written accounts of anyone surviving a full Roman crucifixion.
Well, and also before they were even crucified, Romans would play games with them.
Yeah.
There's game boards on the cobblestones in Jerusalem that had a game board where they would either kill the prisoner or give them a treat or something, or whip them depending on what the dice landed on. And they started playing it with other soldiers, new soldiers who would come in. The older ones would be like, "Hey, you want to play a game?" And then it got to where they would just either beat or even kill other soldiers. So eventually the praetors said, "Hey, use prisoners. We don't care about them." So they eventually just started playing games with them that could kill them, hurt them, or help them a little bit.
Yep. So either way.
That's horrible.
That's before all the
Jesus
nails
gets put
and
on
the
the cross, and there's prophecy. Jesus being the Lamb of God, the Passover Lamb. With the Passover Lamb, you could, no bones were meant to be broken. Jesus did not have a single bone broken. Whenever they rammed the spear through his chest, it went in between his ribs, into his lung, heart, and blood and water came out of him. And this was a really confusing verse, but medically now we know that whenever you asphyxiate, water builds up in your lungs. So when they stab him, water, blood.
That always, I've seen the medical documentation for that stuff, but I'm a bow hunter. I've never ever seen anything like that. I have wondered if it was a supernatural occurrence more than the natural. I've never seen anything like that in the natural world.
Yeah, it's...
But anyway, and it may be, I'm just saying, that's one of the things in Scripture I always wondered about.
Yeah, is it more supernatural or natural?
There are some people that make the contention that it was something supernatural, water of life. And I'm just saying I don't know. I don't know. But anyway. Let me read this verse of Scripture for you. Isaiah 53. He's despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. We hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. And surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. We did esteem him stricken and smitten of God. And he was wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him. With his stripes we were healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We've turned everyone to his own way. But the Lord laid on him the iniquity of us all. The picture of Jesus Christ on the cross and the cruelness and the suffering that he went through so that we could have forgiveness of our sins. Yep. And that's the only reason we're here today, and it's why we do what we do. Mm-hmm. I think this is a neat broadcast. It lets us talk about things that are in Scripture. But ultimately, the purpose for us being here is spreading the Word of God, making sure other people know about Jesus, and know that it's okay to talk to people about this type of stuff, right?
Yeah.